everybody, and welcome to Raising Vibrations and to the monthly forecasts. Hope you're doing well. And in today's video, I'm going to be helping you understand a little bit about aspects and phases. And this is my little piece on how I do my little forecasts in a unique way. So aspects and phases is a way that evolutionary astrology uses to measure the cycles that planets have in relationship to themselves, okay, and to other planets, pardon me. So what happens is you've got two planets, say for instance Pluto and Venus, and what evolutionary astrology will do is they will take those two archetypes and measure the relationship that they have between each other, and then from that measurement and from that relationship establish what type of phase and what type of evolutionary condition those planets carry within each other. And it's really fascinating because when you begin to measure your planets in relationship to other planets, you begin to see the development of how you actually experience your life through these aspects and phases. Now, I've got a little slideshow over here quickly that I want to show you in terms of what is the philosophy behind aspects and phases and what type of methodology do we use to actually measure this, okay? So I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, so what you're looking at is two pictures. On the left-hand side over here, you can see this is about life itself, okay? The first thing that we understand is that everything is in a cyclic formation. Everything is moving through time and space. And so because of that, it is not separate that when you look at two planets or three planets in a birth chart, that they are also in this life cycle. There is a life cycle that each planet has. And each planet in relationship to another is reflecting where that life cycle is. It's no different than measuring a new moon, a first quarter moon, a last quarter moon, and a full moon. They're exactly the same thing. We just do it with planets now. And you can see that when you have a new moon, there's a new intention. When you have a full moon, we're coming into a halfway completion cycle. Again, phasal relationship and life, how it's evolving. The picture on the right-hand side reflects to us that everything is in relationship to everything else. Everything. Okay, it's like a revolving door. The moment that you walk through a revolving door, as you're moving outward, somebody from the outside is coming inward, and that door is revolving us around it. And it's like as one energy moves outward like that, another one's moving in. And everything is in a consistent relationship with everything else. And so because of that, it's natural for us to understand that when we look at planets in our birth chart, there's a natural cycle in terms of awareness, and there's a natural phasal relationship that exists between planets. And when we measure that, what we get is this beautiful harmonic dynamic of where we are in our consciousness and how that has been developed. Okay? And the next thing is how do we actually then establish and what methodology do we use in order to understand these aspects and phases? Well, in evolutionary astrology, you work with the planets, okay? So you've got Mercury, Venus, you've got Mars, you've got Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, okay? And then you have the sun. Now, in this diagram, everything revolves around the sun. So when you measure something in evolutionary astrology terms, there's always a focal point, right? There's a focal point, and there's always a planet that's in relationship to that focal point. And the way that you understand what focal point you have to look at, you understand the relationship that these planets have to the sun. So the sun will always be a focal point, okay? That's so when you say, for instance, want to understand the phasal relationship between Neptune and Jupiter, well, then it has a little bit of a different cycle, but still the same. When you measure planets in relationship to each other, you're measuring the fastest moving planet in relationship to the slowest moving planet. The fastest moving planet in relationship to the slowest moving planet. So therefore, if I had to say, for instance, ask you, what is the phasal relationship between Jupiter and Neptune? You would go, Jupiter is the fastest moving planet, Neptune's the slowest moving planet, and so therefore, Neptune would be your focus point. Because the slowest moving planet is always the focus point. And that's the key that I want you to take away from this conversation. When you measure aspects and phases in your chart, you're measuring two things. One, if you're measuring it against the sun will always be a focus point. So you're always looking for the focus point. And that will always be the sun if you're comparing it against something. Secondly, if you're comparing two planets with each other, you always measure the slowest moving planet as the focus point. So what happens now is you go, okay, I've identified that Neptune is the slowest moving planet. Jupiter's in relationship to it. And so then how do I understand how this works? Very simple. You get a little chart. And this is courtesy of the Evolutionary Astrology glossary, an ebook. And as you can see here on the chart, you've got this whole entire thing. New phase, crescent phase, first quarter phase, gibbous phase, all these phases. And each phase represents an aspect of development. So what you would do is you would take your slowest moving planet and put it at the 0. You would take your fastest moving planet and mathematically calculate the degrees of separation. Okay, so if Neptune's here and Jupiter, say for instance here, you would see that Jupiter is exactly 90 degrees, 90 clicks away from Neptune. And by understanding that phasal relationship, you would go, okay, it's a crisis in action square. And this is what I love about it so much. When we look at squares in astrology, we're like, oh, it's a square. But in EA, there's two types of squares. There's a crisis in action square and a crisis in consciousness square. And they're remarkably different in the sense. Okay, so you can actually try and read your chart. So, I've got Pluto square Mars as an example. The way that Pluto square Mars is going to work in your chart, if it was crisis in consciousness versus crisis in action, are going to be remarkably different. Now, when you have that power within your own awareness to apply that to your chart, you can actually see what you're specifically looking at in terms of your evolutionary development. And it's really, really fascinating. So the next time you begin to understand your chart in terms of aspects and phases, I highly encourage you to learn about aspects and phases, to go and investigate it. And part of my astrology school, I actually teach this when I educate anybody that's wanting to understand evolutionary astrology. So this is something that when you really want to get into astrology, it's something you don't like miss, because it's so empowering. I'll give you a quick example again, just before we jump into this, okay? Let's say, for instance, I have Jupiter and I'm measuring Mars and Jupiter, okay? We know that Jupiter is the slowest moving planet in relationship to Mars. So Jupiter stands there, and we will say that Mars is exactly 300 degrees, okay, away from Jupiter. In other words, Mars has gone all the way around the astrology chart like that because it's moving in that motion, and it gets all the way to that 300 degrees over there. Now, Mars is what is called in a last quarter phase in relationship to Jupiter. So when you look at Mars and Jupiter in the chart and you understand that phasal relationship, you can actually see that the soul's desires in this lifetime, this is the evolutionary astrology, the soul's desires in this lifetime are actually evolving through individuating, in other words, finding and breaking out of the mold of belief systems that they used in the past and allowing us to see perspectives from different unique points of views. That's the way that Mars and Jupiter, in a very plain way, would be operating in somebody's chart. Now, you come into a world that is very like homogenized and very sort of like, this is how truth is and this is what it's got to be. And you put somebody in that's natural tendency is to not follow those rules. Can you begin to see the way that we as human beings are so complex? That's why we have a lot of people in the world saying, well, I'm an atheist, because most of them have got phasal relationships that are breaking down, that are not listening to the general consensus. How much do we accept other people for having their own evolutionary degree? We don't understand it, so therefore we judge it. And this is the type of dynamics that we can get into when we understand more of who we are as a human race to alleviate the chaos that we've got. Food for thought. Hello, my Leo friends, and welcome to a sun sign forecast for the month of March 2017. I hope you're well. And as always, I hope you enjoyed the introduction video in terms of aspects and phases, and sparked a little bit of curiosity around how that actually works. It's really, really fascinating, and it's how evolutionary astrology basically understands the cycles and evolution that we have with planets being in relationship to each other. Okay, so if you're also interested in actually learning astrology itself, I just want to let you know that on the 11th of March, I've got a course that's beginning. And in the description below is a way to sign up for that. Otherwise, you can always write me an email, and if you've got some questions you want me to answer before you want to sign up for that, I'm happy to do that as well, okay? Alrighty then. So we've got your chart, and this is what it looks like for at least the 5th and 6th of March. And of course, we always start off with Pluto. And Pluto represents to us the unconscious emotional development and psychological way in which you relate to life. It's your life, Pluto. And of course, this is moving through your solar 6th house, Leos. And this means that on level, you're watching how people self-improve. Remember, I talk about this every single month, but it's about the way that you are improving your life, the way that you're becoming more competent, and you're empowering yourself through your job, through your work, through the things that you love. And the way in which this is coming together for you is very much orientated around being busy and getting organized in the way that you want your life to run, okay? And of course, a very, very big theme for a March is Venus, okay? And because of that, I feel like Jupiter's a really good focus point to look out for you. With Jupiter being through your 3rd house and in Libra, you're watching the expansion of your communication. You're watching the expansion of your network. You're watching the expansion of how you are connecting with everybody and building things. And naturally speaking, Gemini is about expanding things in a big way and gathering lots of information and moving and changing stuff around. And that's influencing on a deep level the nature of how Pluto is reorganizing your life in a way that's supporting you, what you want to do with your life. And Saturn, of course, still being in your 6th house, sorry, not your 6th house, your solar 5th house, this is bringing to you the emotional development around your creative self-actualization. What are your dreams? Where do you wish to go with your life? How do you wish to bring those into reality for you? Okay, so that's a big deal for you there. So if we have a look on the 4th and 5th of March, you can actually see Venus is actually retrograde. And as I said before, the whole of March is going to be about this Venus retrograde theme. And it's interesting because if you heard about the solar the aspects and phases, you'll see that Mars in relationship to Uranus is in a new phase. And you'll see that Venus in relationship to Uranus is in a balsamic phase. So one is representing completion and the other one is representing new direction. And that's pretty much what this is about for this month. You're going to be deconditioning yourself and breaking down old structures of essential needs and values and what you need. And you're going to be exploring at the same time a new direction, a new essential need. And all of that's around how you network, how you connect with people. It's all around how you are bringing your creative joy into the world and how your life is being reorganized. Okay. Now, of course, this month started out with a deep, intense Pisces energy of letting go, and that's where we begin. And on the 9th of March, we've got Mars entering Taurus, and that's a big deal because Venus, the planet Venus, co-rules the sign Taurus and the sign Libra, where of course Jupiter's in. So when we look at Taurus, it's our inner relationship to ourselves, and when we look at Libra, it's how we experience ourselves through relationships, other people's inner relationship to themselves and how we relate. So Mars moving into Taurus is kickstarting our attention around what? Our essential needs, our inner relationship to ourselves. It's starting the process. So we're going to begin to explore that from about the 10th onwards in a very deep way. And on the 12th of March, just 3 days later, we have a full moon taking place for us. And this is a big deal, okay? And I want you to write in the comments below on your experience of what that solar eclipse was for you, what was like for you when, of course, we had that new moon happening in Pisces. Because in that Pisces new moon, what contained the very fabric of what you need to bring with you going into this new direction, okay? So just like a book that you gain insight from, you don't strap the book to you as a way of remembering the insights. You put the book down, you let it go, and in your consciousness stays the insights and the experience. And you apply those insights relative to whatever life direction you need them to be in. So for you, the solar eclipse that happened in Pisces brought you insight, and now this full moon is going to bring attention to what type of insight you have that you want to use and what you need to let go of. And it's this beginning process of separation between letting go of the past and bringing into the new. And this is all about how do you organize your life and how do you want to connect with people? How are you getting in touch with communication? How do you speak? How do you verbalize? How do you connect? and how do those dreams being met? Okay, so that's a very big thing to pay attention to. And as we move through March, we'll notice that other planets will begin to shift the attention from just letting go to letting go and initiating a new direction. So Mercury enters Aries, and we begin to ask the question, okay, what do I want to do with my instinctual desire? What new life direction do I want to implement in my life that begins to find new meaning? New meaning is the key word there. And then on the 20th of March, we have the Sun entering Aries. Can you see this? Look at that. The Sun entering Aries. And you can progressively begin to see how this Venus retrograde is going to be influencing you throughout this month. Again, we begin with your truth, your philosophy. Okay, and what type of philosophy do you use that validates your inner sense of creative happiness and joy? And how is that creative happiness and joy being communicated into the outside world? And how is that then reorganizing the way in which you want to run your life? Okay, these dynamics. And of course, with the Sun moving into Aries, it's that extra layer. This is when the energy is really going to begin to build up for you, right? By now, you would have reached a point where you've said, okay, that's not what I want. Those are not my needs anymore. These are my needs. These are my new needs, and I'm going to instinctually explore them. And that will happen on the 20th. Now, on the 22nd, we have an energy manifest for us between Pluto and the Moon, and that's, of course, making a huge T-squares in the chart. And for you, this is the reshaping of the belief system that you choose to subscribe to, and that belief system influencing the way you organize your life, and of course, how you then communicate that with the outside world, your truth, right? And then as you look at this very, very intensely, you'll notice that this energy pattern will be a deep shattering of unconscious emotional material. And as you begin to then work with that material, you'll notice that around about the 25th of March, the Moon will make a connection to the South Node, and Venus and the Sun have switched places now. So what we have here is the dissolving of the past, okay, the letting go finally, okay, just as you carry the energy of Pluto conjunct the Moon 2 days ago. And then that new phase relationship that's happening there with those two guys, the Venus and the Sun, that's when that new exploration is going to come up. So from the 20th of March onwards, you'll begin to feel this new energy that you'll want to put into these new explorations. And those new explorations will become the new foundation for what your needs are. And as you begin to let go finally of these old needs that no longer supported your old life. So if we have a look on the 27th and 28th of March, we have a new moon, and that new moon is the completion cycle. I feel like that new moon will be the part in which the work around what are your essential needs of the past, they're going to be letting go completely. That final energy is going to be dissipated, and you're going to watch yourself say, right now I'm fully committed and fully ready to explore this new direction in a very powerful way. Let's see where it takes me. And then as you can see over here on the 30th of March and the 31st of March, we've got not only Pluto and Jupiter making the intense T-square, we also have Mercury entering Taurus, and that of course is going to bring to us the deep unconscious material around these new directions, new social experiences. This is when everything's going to fit into place. So it's a really, really interesting month for us because it begins with stuff that's not working for us, for getting frustrated, and it ends with liberation and wow, I'm excited to explore these new directions. Okay, and throughout the month, it's that consistent switching from frustration to liberation. And then, of course, when you can see there, Venus is actually at 0 degrees Aries. It's retrograde. It's going to go into Pisces, and that's when we begin to associate new meaning to the life direction that we have for us. So, really exciting times ahead for you, my Leo friends. And I really hope that this brought you some insight in terms of how to navigate through this month. Okay, don't forget if you want to learn astrology. On the 11th of March, we've got a beginner's course starting. So, like I said, send me an email if you want to. Other than that, have a fantastic month. Take care. Bye-bye.